Good morning, everybody. This week we're beginning a three-part series and it's going to focus on First Corinthians, Paul's letter to the church at Corinth. And before we look at these issues, it's extremely helpful to understand these issues by learning a little bit about the city of Corinth and the people that make up not only the city, but the church body. The city of Corinth was an extremely prosperous city by virtue of its location. It was located in southern Greece, and it was the center of major trade routes, both north and south and east and west. And of course, this type of prosperity and business brought a lot of different types of people. Some with less than admirable traits. There was a lot of sexual sins. There was a lot of idol worship. And added to that, the Greek culture fostered the rise of many great thinkers, philosophers, poets, teachers. Out of Greece came Aristotle, and Socrates, Homer, Plato, and Socrates. A noted historian tells at the time when some of the great thinkers of Corinth were gathered in a circle, and they were just kind of sitting there. And some of them were striking some very meaningful and thoughtful poses. They would sit there for a while like this. Others would sit like this. Finally, one of them said, "Somebody tell us what you're thinking." One of them said, "Well, I learned a lot about fleas the other day." And they all said, "Do tell. And what he said was, "I had a flea. I put him on the table in front of me, and I said, 'Jump.' And the flea jumped. I then removed one of its legs. And I told the flea, 'Jump.' And the flea jumped. I removed the second leg. And I told the flea to jump. And the flea jumped. We did it for the third, fourth, fifth leg. Came to the fifth leg and tore it off. I said to the flea, 'Jump.' The flea did not jump. So I repeated my command. 'Jump.' The flea did not jump. And the other fellow asked him, 'What did you learn about the flea from this?' And he said, 'Well, I learned that when a flea has no legs, it loses its sense of hearing.'" The knowledge, again, was highly valued for it. And as for the church in Corinth, you can imagine that this. As for the church in Corinth, it was made up of this population from Corinth. And so there would have been some influence of the city upon the church, in the culture upon the church. It would have emerged in a number of attitudes and behaviors that would have required radical surgery without killing the patient. And that's what Paul is attempting to do in his letter. One commentator suggests that Corinth was at the same time New York, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas of the ancient world. Now, the Corinthian church was certainly not acting at all like what Paul had envisioned when he founded the church. And so he wrote this letter about 3 years after he had left it. And the first phrase on the castaway, the life will play. Well, throughout this letter, Paul addresses at least 11 different concerns and tendencies for behavior. So in this letter, 1 Corinthians, Paul has devoted page after page of correcting demonstrate to them about divisions in the church, about morality and immorality in the church, about lawsuits among believers, and once more for good measure, immorality in the church. There was a lot of immorality in the church apparently. And then we come to chapter 8. And Paul has to address a cultural habit that is unique to the Christians in Corinthians. Now, the issue we're going to look at today deals with church liberty. And the earliest Jewish converts in Jerusalem would not have encountered this problem. Jews themselves, whether Christians or not, would not have encountered this problem. But for these new Christians in Corinth in this church, most of whom are not Jews, there is a problem. And here's the problem. Whether or not they should eat meat that was offered to idols. And so let's pick this up at 1 Corinthians chapter 8, beginning at verse 1. Now about food sacrificed to idols, we know that we possess all knowledge, but knowledge puffs up, while love builds up. Those who think they know something do not yet know as they ought to know. But whoever loves God is known by God. So then, about eating food sacrificed to idols, we know that an idol is nothing at all in the world, and that there is no God but one. Or even if there are so-called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, as indeed there are many gods and many lords, yet to us there is but one God, the Father, from whom all things came and for whom we live. And there is but one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom all things came and through whom we live. But not everyone possesses this knowledge. Some people are still so accustomed to idols that when they eat sacrificial food, they think of it as having been sacrificed to a god. And since their conscience is weak, it is defiled. The food does not bring us near to God. We are no worse if we do not eat, and no better if we do. Be careful, however, that the exercise of your right does not become a stumbling block to the weak. For if someone with a weak conscience sees you, with all your knowledge, eating in an idol's temple, won't that person be emboldened to eat what is sacrificed to idols? So this weak brother or sister for whom Christ died is destroyed by your knowledge. When you sin against them in this way and wound their weak conscience, you sin against Christ. Therefore, what I eat causes my brothers or sisters to fall into sin, I will never eat meat again, so that I will not cause them to fall. And so the specific question that Paul is trying to address is what limits should Christians exercise in eating food that has previously been sacrificed on a pagan altar? Evidently, the temples for idol worship in Corinth had a lot of leftover meat. And many of the pagan sacrificial rituals, only part of that meat was burned on the altar. The remainder was either eaten in sacrificial feasts at the pagan temples or in homes, and was sold in the marketplace. And so was it a spiritual compromise for a follower of Jesus to accept an invitation to such a feast? Or was it acceptable for believers to buy such meat in the marketplace? So what is it that Paul wants the Corinthians to understand about this issue? And it is this, that knowledge puffs, but love builds. Now apparently some of the Corinthians were arrogantly flaunting this slogan, "We have all knowledge." They were claiming that the gospel had enlightened them to the reality, and this is properly so, that idol statues are merely that, they're statues. Idols are nothing, and there is only one true God. That was correct thinking. so even likely believers had no qualms about eating food that had been sacrificed to idols. However, these church members were flaunting their freedom in front of other believers who, perhaps only a short time earlier, had been unbelievers and were eating such food as if it were truly meat eaten in the presence of an idol. Paul immediately made the point that living this way, based on knowledge alone, inflates a person's pride and conceit and deadly to relationships. On the other hand, love builds up relationships. Knowledge is too often about self and self-importance. Love is about others and their importance. Paul is not denying the importance of truth and sound doctrine. Rather, he is pointing out that knowledge is not the only thing believers must pursue as they live day by day. What else is Paul telling the Corinthians? Knowledge is not the end of things. It leads to love. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, before knowledge, put God first. Think that godly knowledge is not the end of things. It leads to love. Verses 2 and 3 says this: those who think they know something, and yet do not yet know as they ought to know. But if anyone loves God, he is known by him. Now, we use the word "but" in this verse 2. It's sort of a connection. And what it's telling us is it's not knowledge that is important, but love. And this verse could be paraphrased this way: you think you know something? Well, true knowledge consists not in the accumulation of so much data, but in the fact that one has learned to live in love toward all. In Christian ethics, knowledge must always lead to love. Knowledge must always lead to love. Philippians 1:9 says that there's something ahead of letter here that sort of expands on this issue. Paul says, and this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight. And what Paul's saying here in Philippians is that love is rooted in knowledge and depth of insight. Knowledge is everything. While it is true that insight often leads to freedom, this is what the Corinthians wanted. They wanted this freedom. It's also true that knowledge often results in the demand for freedom in the form of grace. The right to eat this meat whenever they want it. This is what happened at Corinth. In the Christian faith, knowledge or insight is never an end in itself. It is only the means to a greater end, which is love, the building up of others. The best way to demonstrate that we have been redeemed is by focusing on love rather than by flaunting knowledge. Some of the Corinthians were flaunting their knowledge. And some Christians have done the same thing throughout the ages. So with regard to eating food offered to idols, Paul states the principle that we are to base our behavior toward others on a love for God. Our actions are to grow out of this love more than out of the knowledge we have about a particular issue. What else is Paul saying? Actually, Paul's asking a question. Can you be certain that your knowledgeable stance is not a stumbling block for others? Can you be certain that your knowledgeable stance is not a stumbling block for others? me to, and it would be fine to do that. But how might that be interpreted by others? What impact might it have on a new convert? Or on someone who would take that to mean that there's no real difference between things offered to Satan and things offered to God? And in a setting where no one would have a problem with it, it would be fine. But in a setting where someone might have a problem with it, it could lead to their fall, it would be wrong. What else is Paul asking? Are you willing to risk the consequence of an error in judgment? Here's the consequence, verse 12. Now, when you sin like this against the brothers and wound their weak conscience, you're sinning against Christ. Paul continues to relentlessly draw this conclusion. And here's his line of thinking. Suppose a mature, knowledgeable Christian has chosen to behave